Hey horror fans, now that we're in the month of October, it's officially Halloween season, and what better way to kick it off than talking about one of my favorite franchises of all time, the Halloween franchise. Now, I've actually already done this video, but granted this was 3 movies ago, so let's revisit it, shall we? Today, let's rank all 13, yes, 13 Halloween movies, and also the irony is not lost on me, Halloween reached 13 movies before Friday the 13th did, who is still stuck at 12. I will forever laugh at that. So yeah, today we're gonna look at all 13 movies in the iconic Halloween franchise. That includes the new David Gordon Green trilogy, which I didn't include in the previous one. And also, I'm sure my thoughts have changed, and especially when you get to like 3, 4, and 2, those slots all kind of shuffle around. So this is my ranking of the day that I'm recording this. These are how I would slot the Halloween movies. Now, some opinions may change, but my number 13 kicking us off, that never changes and probably never will. The number 13, my least favorite movie in the Halloween franchise, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. I don't particularly care for either of Rob Zombie's Halloween movies. I also don't really care for Rob Zombie's movies in general. I don't particularly like his brand of movie making. Granted, he probably has a talent for it. It's just not my specific style that I like. He creates characters intentionally that are just not really likable characters, and I think it's at its worst for Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. There is really no one to latch onto. No one's really a good person. Loomis is obnoxiously bad in this one. He was kind of frustrating in the last one, but this is so much worse. I get what Zombie was going for with Laurie this time around, if she's got a lot of trauma that she's dealing with, seeing all of her friends die in the last Halloween, but he drastically overdid it, and she is just as insufferable as Loomis. Michael doesn't really resemble Michael at all. Don't even get me started on the whole white horse thing. It just doesn't come together for me. But the one thing that sticks with me is this is definitively the movie that has, I think, the most unnecessarily cruel scene in the entire Halloween franchise. You brought Danielle Harris back, who's a fan favorite character from Halloween 4 and 5, and you brutally murder her in the most, uncomfortable way possible. It's just over the top, not pleasant to watch, and it felt I get what Rob Zombie was going for, yeah, we're gonna give you a good death as a good send-off to the franchise. It felt unnecessarily mean how they treated Danielle Harris's character, and it felt uncomfortable to watch. The whole movie's uncomfortable to watch. I get that it's a killer chasing people, but I just don't like Rob Zombie's style. At number 12, we have the quote-unquote final Halloween movie, until, another one comes along in the next year or two. Halloween Ends. I get what the creative team was going for here, but it does not come together for me and for a lot of other Halloween fans. I seem to recall not being a big fan of this one. It all comes down, for a lot of people, myself included, to the Corey character. This is a character that they introduced for the 3rd movie that should have been introduced way back in part 1. He essentially takes the place of Michael Myers, which on paper might have worked, but he's just shoehorned in there and it doesn't come together naturally. It just doesn't really work. I get that the marketing team was advertising this as the final confrontation between Laurie Strode and Michael Myers again, because they couldn't really just show what the movie really was, which was the rise of Corey, and it's just not that interesting or compelling. But even taking the Corey stuff aside, the story is so messy and all over the place, and this is for a Halloween movie, which are notoriously messy in the later movies. Ends was frustrating, and I'm curious to see the direction that the franchise goes now, because we started off so strong, and then, yeah. At number 11, we've got one that everyone seems to hate, and I only kinda dislike it, and that is Halloween Resurrection. I get that this movie's not good. It's not a well-made movie at all. It's honestly pretty bad, but if it wasn't a Michael Myers movie, I think people would hate this a whole lot less, and it would just be a movie of its time, because guys, this movie is very of its time. I don't hate this one just because it's a dumb slasher movie. Is it dumb that it's Michael? Yeah, a little bit, but I can at least have fun with it, and there's some elements that are really stupid, like the whole, why is this tripod spiked? That's I hyperfixate on that scene every time I watch it. It's so stupid, but it's kind of dumb, and I know people hate Busta Rhymes. He's having fun in it. I can't fault him for that. Some people are doing better performances than others in this. They know what movie they're in. This is not a good movie by any stretch of the imagination. It's there, but it's watchable, at least for me. Some other movies in this franchise, like the other two that we've talked about so far, I have no desire to rewatch those. Resurrection, I'll pop that one on at least and have some fun with it, and that's why it's slotted where it is. At number 10, we have Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers, or Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers, or Halloween 6, The Origin of Michael Myers. This movie was a mess, clearly by its many titles, so depending on which one you actually want to call it, or if you want to go with the producer's cut or the theatrical cut, it's a complicated mess, and it shows up on screen with this movie. There are two different versions of this movie. I don't particularly care for either one, and maybe it's just because I am a big fan of the Jamie storyline that was Halloween 4 and 5, and that comes to a screeching halt with Halloween 6. No one really knows what they're supposed to be doing in this. I know everyone loves Paul Rudd now, but he is not good in this movie. That being said, I don't think he was given great writing to work with. Halloween 6 is just, it's there. It's got so many weird things to it, and I get that had a very troubled production. It just doesn't work, and then the whole Michael can be stopped with ancient ruins. Either the ruins or beaten to death with a pipe. Both I think are incredibly stupid. This movie just does not work for me. However, I will say, after watching Halloween 4 and Halloween 5, this mask and the Michael Myers within it are actually not too bad. They're pretty decent. Michael's fairly scary and intimidating in this one, and the mask is much better than 4 and 5. Granted, he doesn't get a whole lot to do, and again, he's stopped by magic stones. At number 9, we have Halloween Kills. Now, another one, just like Halloween Ends, was very divisive among fans. I like about half this movie, not necessarily like, oh, the halfway point of this movie is where it loses me. They're pick and choose some elements, and when you cobble them together, it equals about half the movie that I like. It's a messy movie that feels very much like it's the victim of, this is the middle part of a trilogy, we just gotta bide our time to get to part 3. And then part 3, takes a wide left turn in a whole separate direction from where they clearly were setting up the story, but that's neither here nor there. We've already beaten that dead horse. This was all over the place from a story perspective. But why is Kills rated so much higher? The flashback scene. The scene that they take us back to the night Michael was killing everybody was done with so much love, care, and attention to detail that I'm like, okay, you've sold me. Whatever the new Halloween movies are, I want them to be set back in time because you've done such a good job of recreating that original movie. It was just so cool to revisit that 70s aesthetic for Haddonfield. As we'll see later down the list, I like the retro stuff. I like the old grainy film look of the classic Halloween movies. I liked going back to that. It was so refreshing. I wish we could have spent more time there. Was it a little bit of fan service? I don't care. I'm the fan being serviced here.
What?
Fan service, I don't think is necessarily the cardinal sin that geek culture makes it out to be. I had fun with the fan service in Halloween Kills. Plus, there's some good kills to be had in it. It's literally in the name. Michael goes on this epic rampage that we've been waiting to see for a long time. At number 8, we have Rob Zombie's Halloween. Now, all 13 of the movies that we're talking about today, I have like some bullet points, just like 2 or 3 notes in my notes app here to just be like, all right, here are the important things to talk about. For Rob Zombie's Halloween, I just wrote down, it's there. It's a movie I saw. It's a movie in the Halloween franchise, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if that's how Rob Zombie also thinks about this movie, because he's been very vocal about his dislike of the process for his first Halloween movie. That's why Halloween 2 is so out there, weird, and different, because the studio basically had to beg him to come back to do Halloween 2. He's like, sure, I'll do it, but it's gonna be a Rob Zombie movie more so that it's a Halloween movie. So he did his own thing, and more power to him for that. But when it comes to Rob Zombie's Halloween 1, it's very much 2 separate things. It's the Halloween / Michael Myers prequel that no one asked for except Rob Zombie-ified. And then the second half is just recreating the original Halloween movie. It kind of just only does half interesting stuff with both parts of it, but it's not the worst movie in the world. I've seen so much worse horror movies, and there's worse in the Halloween franchise. It's fine. It's a movie that exists. At number 7, we have an interesting one. We've got Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers. Now, on paper, I always want to give this movie the benefit of the doubt, and then I rewatch it like every year and go, oh yeah, this is worse than I thought, and I'm blinded by that nostalgia every single time that I watch it because, as we'll talk about later, I really like Halloween 4 and the characters that they set up with Jamie and Rachel and the world that they've set up for Haddonfield in 1988 as a continuation of the original Halloween. I just like that aesthetic. So I'm always like, okay, I like Halloween 4, and then we lead into Halloween 5, and it's not good, guys. Halloween 5 is where the wheels start coming off the bike a little bit for the franchise, and we get some really interesting and weird story decisions, but there's enough Halloween 4 still in there that I'm partial to Halloween 5, even if it's a really sloppy and messy movie, like certain characters getting axed off. I still have not forgiven the filmmakers for, because I don't like the choices of who they killed and who they left alive. It's stupid and I hate it. But visually and tonally, for the most part, it feels like a continuation of Halloween 4, which I really, really enjoy. So I want more time in that specific era of Halloween. It's just that the story's a little sloppy and messy. Michael's intimidating. It's a good enough Michael performance, minus the weird and wonky ending where he cries a little bit. Halloween 5 is a movie. It is a movie that I watch every year. Is it a good movie? No, but I keep forgetting that it's not a good movie until after I'm done with it. And will I stop watching this movie? Probably not. At number 6, we get the Halloween movie that I feel like the further we get out from it, the more people I'm seeing bag on it, but it's really not that bad. And that is Halloween 2018. Halloween, the Blumhouse Halloween, whatever you want to call it. This movie was a good movie, and I think more and more people are bagging on it just because we spent some time away from it and because the rest of the trilogy wasn't as great as it could have been. But looking at just that first Halloween movie, it's pretty solid. It was actually my first Halloween movie I ever saw in theaters, so I was super excited. I'm going to be partial to it one or the other. But this movie, the perfect analogy I always go with is it feels like the Force Awakens of the Halloween franchise. You have a dormant franchise that's been more or less quiet for a very long time. Then, when you come back, you reboot it with the original cast. You more or less just retread the events of the original, and people go away happy. It's a safe movie, but when it comes to a Halloween franchise, at that point in 2018, safe was probably the best option to go with. I like what they do for Halloween 2018, minus the podcasters. The podcasters was a choice. I don't mind Halloween 2018. To me, it actually has one of the best soundtracks in the entire franchise. I love the score for 2018's Halloween. The Shape Hunts Allison. Dude, don't even get me started. That's one of my favorite tracks, like, in any movie soundtrack ever. I love that score. John Carpenter reuniting and teaming up with Daniel Davies and Cody Carpenter. Just give me more of that, please. I like Halloween 2018. I always will. I get that the other two were bad, and I think that kind of clouds people's judgment on the first one, but it brought back Halloween into the pop culture, and for that I can always be happy with it, even if I cannot acknowledge it's just retreading the events of better Halloween movies. At number 5, we have the now beloved black sheep of the Halloween franchise, Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, also known as the one without Michael Myers. I think this was one of the last Halloween movies that I actually watched. So when I watched all the Halloween movies in college, I kind of watched them in a weird, funky order. Watched the original, loved it. Watched Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. Stupidly, we rented it for Family Video. We put on the first 10 minutes. We're like, this feels really, really different than the first. Oh, we're stupid. Then my buddy, who was a big Halloween fan, told us to skip 3 because there's no Michael. Halloween 3 was the last one I watched because I'd stay away from it for so long because there's no Michael. And the first time I watched it, I was like, the heck did I just watch? This is wonky and weird and all over the place, and it has nothing to do with the Michael Myers that I know and love. But the thing is, the more I watch Halloween 3, the more I absolutely love it. It is weird. It is wonky. It is out there, but that's what makes it special and unique. Halloween 3 Season of the Witch feels like a Twilight Zone episode if it was given a full-length runtime. You've got warlocks and Stonehenge and corrupting children's minds with commercials and terrifying children's masks. All kinds of weirdness in Halloween 3, but it's that just bonkers balls to the wall mentality that makes it so unique and stand out so much for me. Plus, it's a fantastic score by John Carpenter. And the fact that Michael isn't in it doesn't stop the movie from having some of the most gruesome and grotesque and over-the-top kills. I clearly cannot show you on this video, but You're just gonna have to trust me. I just enjoy Halloween 3, and it's probably the most Halloweenish, the holiday of all the Halloween movies. Like, the core of the movie is Halloween, and it's hard not to get behind that concept. So I gotta be honest, 4, 3, and 2 all kind of fluctuate depending on which one I watched most recently, my mindset for that day. So the next 3 options all kind of could be interchanged depending on a variety of factors. But for the time of recording, at number 4, we've got the original Halloween 2. I enjoy this movie quite a bit, even though the more I watch it, the more flaws I can kind of see of, like, Jamie Lee Curtis really isn't in this movie a whole lot. When she is, she's just kind of out of it. She's like comatose, she's got this really terrible wig, and she's bedridden. But I think that bedriddenness makes it more intimidating of really just being locked down in this one specific location. This movie is hurt because there's several critical deleted scenes that I definitely would not have deleted. There's a whole scene about, oh wow, it's so dark in here, where'd the power go? And Michael has cut the power. Why did you cut that? You have this half-lit hospital, which is creepy, and it's a great setting, but it's something that I always point out whenever I'm watching this with my wife. As much as we love it, I actually think Halloween 2 is her favorite of the Halloween sequels. We enjoy this one. We watch this one all the time. It feels like a great continuation of that original Halloween, primarily because you got Dean Cundey still doing the cinematography, John Carpenter still doing the music. It very much just feels like a continuation of that same story. It happens in the exact same night. It continues to flow. It logically makes sense as to where it's going. This is much more of a Loomis story this time around than Laurie, even though there's some big revelations about Laurie that would have ramifications for the rest of the franchise, but we can debate if that was a good choice somewhere else. I could take it or leave it, the revelations that come out in Halloween 2 that define the Halloween franchise. But given that I like Loomis a lot as a character, and I kind of think that he's where we're going to be pivoting for any Halloween movies going forward, I like Halloween 2 a lot, and it kind of fluctuates, like I said, 4, 3, or 2, any one of those spots. But for today, it's going on the number 4 spot, because at number 3, we've got the other Laurie movie, Halloween H2O. Admittedly, probably the dumbest name in the entire franchise, and this is the one that has the highest of highs and the lowest of lows for me. The lows being, this is easily the worst Michael Myers in the entire franchise. There's some choices that happen with Michael, whether it's the terrible masks and the CGI mask that's in this movie, or the actor's performance as Michael was just off. I think whether he was just given bad direction or he went rogue and was doing his own thing. This Michael is not particularly intimidating to me at all, and the music is just there. The music is a whole other issue that you can look up on your own, but it is not particularly Halloweenish for the most part, except when it hits, it really, really hits. Halloween H2O has one of my favorite moments of all time and one of my favorite musical cues of all time, which is when Laurie sends her son off to basically go find help, and she locks herself in the campus with Michael, and the music swells, and she's just screaming for her brother. It's just perfect. This movie was made in its last 20 minutes for me. The whole fight between Laurie and Michael just makes everything worth it. Is this movie incredibly 90s? Absolutely. But as someone that actually is kind of nostalgic for 90s slashers like I Know What You Did Last Summer, Urban Legend, The Faculty, if you tell me Kevin Williamson wrote the movie, I'm gonna watch it. And while he's not the official writer, he definitely had some help on this movie. I enjoy 90s slashers. I enjoy a final face-off between the good guy, the Van Helsing type character, versus our monster, our Dracula type character. Give me ultimate good versus ultimate evil. That is H2O in a nutshell. Even if it does run a little short, it's one of the shortest Halloween movies. I don't care. It's not that scary, but boy, is the action great. And this is the ending that every horror fan wants, I think, for Laurie, and it's, you know, still what some people consider to be the canon ending for most of the characters in this franchise. And like I said, things fluctuate all the time, so this could be number 3 or number 4, but today, at the time of recording, at number 2, we have Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. Now, after Halloween 3 failed at the box office because, you know, no Michael Myers, they made it blatantly clear that, yes, he's back. The Return of Michael Myers. What happens? We basically get The Force Awakens before The Force Awakens. We get a lot of the same story beats as the original Halloween, but with a fresh twist. Like, there's enough changes to the material this time around that the story feels fresh. This time around, Michael's not chasing Laurie. He's chasing Laurie's kid, Jamie, who is adopted by the separate family. So the fact that it's a child this time around as opposed to a high school teenager is different. But for me, what sells Halloween 4, one, is the aesthetic, this like 80s classic film look, but also it's set very much Halloween time, like they're hunting for Halloween costumes, there's trick-or-treating. It's the story, though, between Rachel, the actual older sister, and then Jamie, the one that is adopted and brought into this family. That's the core of Halloween 4. Halloween, for me, why I like it more so than like a Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street is, by and large, the human characters are the draw. Yeah, you still have your killer that people, depending on your preferences, are going to be rooting for the killer. Halloween has good protagonists, and Jamie and Rachel are two of my absolute favorites. In terms of story arcs, I'd argue there's no one with a better story arc than Rachel in Halloween 4. She goes from basically wanting nothing to do with this adopted sister to fully accepting and embracing this sister/protector role by the end of it. She's ready to stare down with Michael to protect this new family member of hers, and I think that arc is really, really well done. Also, mention the music all the time. I really like Alan Howard's music for this. It feels more atmospheric than the original Halloween score. It's Halloween, but it's not. That's all I can really sum up Halloween 4 as. It's the original Halloween, but a different take on it. It felt like a continuation while not being a slave to the original 2 movies, if that makes sense. Which naturally, of course, there was no doubt whatsoever that number 1 is the original Halloween from 1978. This is not just one of my favorite horror movies of all time. This is my favorite horror movie of all time. It's also one of my favorite movies of all time. It's definitely in my top 10. This was the movie that changed my perspective on film in general. I didn't really grow up with scary movies, but after Halloween, I basically dove headfirst in this whole genre, and I've never looked back. Halloween is just perfect. If you didn't grow up with Halloween, or you grew up in the modern day, does it still work? I think so. Maybe some people might think it's a little bit slow, but I think the pace is perfectly methodical. Like, the pieces come together at just the right tempo. The characters are just likable enough, but they feel very human. They don't feel like they're just cannon fodder, even though they very, very clearly are. You get Laurie and Loomis as two interesting protagonists, but are very, very different characters. Loomis is very driven, very much the Van Helsing type of, oh, I have to stop this monster. And Laurie being the completely oblivious one, but kind of suspects this whole time that something's not quite right, and it's that suspicion that ultimately sees her survive the night, so to speak, just because she's a little bit smarter than those around her who are preoccupied with other stuff. Halloween is the stereotypical slasher archetype, just because it's the one that started it all, and to me, it's still the one that does it the best. I love the original Halloween. It's one of the best movies ever made, I think, especially in the horror genre. What do you guys think? What are your all-time favorite Halloween movies? Well, how would you rank all 13 movies in the Halloween franchise? What's the best? What's the worst? Where do you put everything in the middle? Whatever your thoughts, let me know down in the comments below. And if you like what you see and want to see more, subscribe to the channel. And as always, stay sharp, movie guys and gals.